Production funding for Common Ground is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Common Ground. I'm your host, Ashley Hall. Common Ground is a weekly series that highlights northern and central Minnesota culture. Each week we'll explore the unique people, places, and events that are an important part of our region. Each week, Common Ground videographers, editors, and myself will take viewers on a journey of exploration into the worlds of art, history, and culture. This week on Common Ground, meet Kyle Critchen of Brainerd, a ceramic artist and sculptor who shares his knowledge of stoneware pottery. Take a tour around the Northern Trackers Railroad Club and see what they're doing to preserve northern Minnesota's railroad history. And finally, you can take a look at Grandview Lodge's earlier days.
My name is Laverne Summers. I am the current president of Northern Trackers Model Railroad Club. Darlene Belizina picked up a list of people interested in model railroading at a train shop, hobby shop in Brainerd, and made a number of phone calls and picked up a few people that ended up with 6 of us meeting with her in Deerwood. And we had a meeting and decided to form a train club. And from that point on, we incorporated as a tax-exempt organization. Our club was named the Northern Trackers Model Railroad Club, and we started looking at try and find a place to move us, to get a building to build trains in. And that time, Bill Burry brother came up with the idea of, had a building for us, which is the building we're currently in Cross Lake. And we've been here ever since about 2006. We are scattered from as far, oh boy, Bemidji. We have one couple from Bemidji. I'm from Hackensack, Pine River, Brainerd, down by Garrison, Piers. We have supporters who are from various places in the country. Far south is Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. They stop usually up in the summer and join the club to be a financial supporter for the club. We started out as a bunch of guys who kind of wanted just a place to run trains. We've expanded to trying to create museum quality stuff. Our HO layout is a signature layout for mining and logging between Brainerd and Bemidji from about 1900 to 1919. And for the most part, it replicates that time period. That was designed by Cyril Durenberger. He is a historian, and he's got books and books and books on the early railroading here. We also have books in our office with pictures and whatnot depicting what was in this area at that time, and this is what we've tried to replicate. So it's pretty accurate. It's we've got a small space, so you can't put everything in, but you try and get what you can in to make it look right. Everything basically on these layouts we've made. We buy kit packages. They're cut up and remodeled to fit the time periods we're running. We have a gentleman in our club that Joe Doer makes the trees for us. All the trees you saw, he made those. I do the bridge work. Another gentleman does the bridge work. We have another individual, a couple of us who like to do landscaping, track layers, electricians. So over the course of the last couple of years, we've made our mistakes and learned from them and progressed. We have one gentleman in our club who is a master railroader, and that's Cyril Durenberger. He's a professor in Texas, down Austin, Texas. He's here 2-3 months every summer. So we're a pretty diverse group of people here, and love trains and have fun. We socialize as a club. Wives are getting involved with us, and we have a good time. Well, we've got an awful lot of talented people here, and I sometimes think you can see the loggers out in the woods chopping wood if you look hard enough. If they wanted to make it move, they'd probably figure out a way of doing it. And that's what's fun with this, is the people you work with here. They're dedicated to railroading, and they're not afraid to put the time in to do this, and they do a good job at it. We have 2 or 3 gentlemen in our club who are excellent tour givers.
My name is Joe Hampel. I'm one of the tour guides here at Northern Trackers Railroad Club. I'm also the vice president of the organization, which means I don't have any real duties. So I enjoy giving the tours, and or one of the people that gives the tours. Well, I think what makes us unique, at least in my opinion, is that we do have this historic layout. Rather than just a typical model railroad setup, this is our layout is trying to represent what things were like turn of the century, the mining industry and the logging industry. You'll see perhaps a few passenger cars, but for the most part it was small locomotives, low-speed operations hauling logs and ore out of the neighborhood. This section of our layout represents the town of Nary, probably in the turn of the century, 1910, 1915. And I understand at that time there were probably 4,000 or 5,000 people living in Nary. The railroad camp, or the logging camp that we're identifying here, has been built from scratch by one of our members. He started with photographs of the area, things we knew existed at that time. He took the photographs home and made the individual buildings, and then additional items were put in, figures, various people, logging operations, so that people can see what the Nary area looked like back then. One of the unique things about the Nary layout is the fact that there's not a road bed. There's just tracks and ties laid on the ground, because a logging camp was a very temporary thing. They didn't want to take the time to build a first-class railroad track. So we've done the same thing here. We've put the tracks down right on the ground, and all set, so when they run out of logs here, they can move the camp to the next place. This section of our layout, the historic representation, is of Pine River, and because we have to compress space, from Pine River we move right over here into a logging camp that would have been typically in the area of Pine River. Logging was one of the two major industries, turn of the century, along with mining. If you can look in here, you can see all of the operations that would have happened in the woods as the logs are cut, trimmed, hoisted onto flat cars, then eventually hooked up with a locomotive, and they would have gone either to a sawmill directly, or they would have gone to a river where they would have been rafted to the next sawmill. One of the things I'd like to point out, if you look over here, a representation of Walker. You can see lots of scenery, lots of trees, scenery along the track. All of this has been made locally by members of the club. One of our members has made all of these trees individually. He knows how many there are. He isn't telling us, but there will be a raffle later this year. Well, one of the questions we get is, how did we get the water? Where does it go? What's happening here? The water is put in, the streams and lakes. We start with a cavity in the layout. We paint it, generally if it's a lake, we'll paint it black in the center and come out with greens and browns as we get closer to the edge. Pour a little bit of sand in it, same deal, color it. And then we pour a liquid resin onto that surface. In a few hours, few minutes, the resin dries and we have a hard surface. One of the things that makes our club unique, this track layout doesn't just have loops going around the layout. As you notice here, there are a number of sidings. These are in place representing the way logging or the railroad industry actually worked and still works. The sidings allow cars to be dropped off at various industries, various places. Cars are typically then filled up with logs or ore, whatever is the product. And then the trains come back and pick those up. So they needed siding so that a locomotive can detach itself from one end of the string of cars, get to the back, cut a few cars loose, get back to the front and move things around. It's fairly complicated, but this layout allows actual train operations to be conducted by members. This area represents the iron mining interests in the area. Track high and low has been put together. Trestle has been built stick by stick by one of our members, including the trestle on this side as well as the retaining wall. Iron ore chunks, gravel from the pits we've collected and is actually used to depict the iron ore in the soil around the area. Well, we've got a couple of trains running. I don't know when and where they're going to show up. Here you've got one coming out of the overpass. This area isn't completed yet. but we have a working turntable. Someday there will be a sawmill over there in Brainerd. Here you can see the logs being brought in by a railroad car, rolled into Rice Lake. Well, the model train equipment, whether you're talking O-scale or HO, today they have, while they look like old-time locomotives, they have electronic chips in the tender. They carry their own sound.
The rail line. Come and see us. You want to see trains, bring your kids, bring your grandkids, take a walk back into history.
The Grandview Lodge that we know today started out as a real estate development. The name of the man who started it was M.V. Baker, who was a real estate and property management man from Minneapolis. And he began selling lots, and if you notice down there, there are small 50-foot lots and that type of thing that he sold. The story goes that when they were up here in the summer, in order to keep his wife busy so that she wouldn't be telling him what to do and how to do it, he built this lodge, because then she would have to be busy building the lodge, and she was obviously very good at it. And then the Coate family, who had already owned Camp Lincoln for boys and Camp Lake Hubert for girls, purchased the Grandview Lodge, and they are the ones who built it into what it is today.
We hope that you enjoyed taking a step back in time and learning about all the pockets of creativity right here in the North Country. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week right here on Common Ground. If you have a segment idea for Common Ground, please contact us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3022.